It was a stormy night, the kind where the rain never seems to stop, and the roads are slick with water. The dim glow of streetlights reflected off the wet pavement, casting long shadows that made everything look eerie. On the edge of a quiet, forgotten road, a sleek black sports car came to a sudden halt, its engine sputtering to a stop. The driver, a tall man with shaggy hair and a leather jacket, stepped out, and for a moment he blended into the night, his face hidden beneath the collar of his coat. But when he looked up, his identity became clear. It was Keanu Reeves, but this wasn't some big Hollywood scene or a movie set. No cameras, no flashing lights, just a man stranded on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere, late at night, in need of help. Standing nearby was an elderly man hunched over from years of hard work. His name was Jack, a mechanic who'd spent most of his life fixing cars. Now, at his age, he ran a small, run-down shop in town, struggling to make ends meet. His hands were weathered, his body tired, but his skills, those never left him. Jack had seen it all, or so he thought. Jack had just locked up his shop for the night when he noticed the car break down. Instinctively, he grabbed his toolkit from his truck and made his way over, thinking this would be just another late-night repair. Little did he know this would be anything but ordinary. Keanu Reeves, one of the most famous actors in the world, was now standing right in front of him, awaiting for him to fix his car. Jack couldn't help but chuckle to himself. "This is a strange night," he muttered under his breath. "Can you help me out?" Keanu asked, his voice calm and steady, though there was a hint of frustration in his eyes. Jack wiped his brow with a rag and nodded. "I've got you covered. Mr. Reeves, just give me a minute." But as he opened the hood and started working, something in the air felt different. It wasn't just the rain or the hour of the night. It was the quiet understanding between them, the kind that didn't need words. The more Jack worked, the more he realized this encounter wasn't going to be as simple as fixing a broken engine. In the quiet hum of the rain, an unexpected connection was beginning to form, one that would soon change both of their lives forever. What would you do if you found yourself face to face with a Hollywood legend, just trying to fix his car? Would you have the courage to ask the questions you've always wanted to know? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to hit subscribe to continue this thrilling story. You won't want to miss what happens next. As Jack worked on the engine, his hands moved with the familiarity of someone who had spent a lifetime immersed in the world of gears and metal. The rain continued to pour, the sound of droplets hitting the hood a constant backdrop to the low hum of his tools. Keanu stood back, his arms crossed, watching Jack with quiet interest. It wasn't the usual tension of a customer waiting for their car to be fixed. There was something more here, something unspoken. "So you've been doing this for a long time?" Keanu asked, breaking the silence. Jack glanced up, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. He let out a soft chuckle. "Longer than I care to admit. Fixed everything from old trucks to sports cars like yours. But that was when I had my shop open full-time." Keanu nodded as if he understood. "And now?" he asked gently. Jack hesitated for a moment, his hands pausing mid-repair. He didn't mind talking, but this was one of those things he didn't often share with strangers, or with anyone, really. He glanced over at Keanu, whose calm demeanor somehow made it easier to open up. "I lost my wife a few years ago," Jack finally said, his voice low. "She was the heart of this place, you know. After she passed, it all started to fall apart. Customers stopped coming, and I couldn't keep up with the bills, so now it's just me, here and there, working on cars when I can." Keanu looked at him with understanding. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said, his voice sincere. "Losing someone, it changes everything." Jack nodded, the weight of those words settling in his chest. "Yeah, it does. But you keep going. You have. So you can't let it stop you." Keanu paused, taking in the words. His usual stoic expression softened as he stepped closer, glancing at the mechanic's worn-down shop in the distance. "I get that," he said quietly. "Sometimes life throws things at you that you're not ready for, but you still find a way to keep going." Jack chuckled, though it was tinged with sadness. "Not everyone gets to be famous enough to escape the hard times. I'm just trying to survive." Keanu raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Fame isn't all it's cracked up to be, you know? Jack looked up at him, a bit surprised. And what do you mean? Keanu seemed to think for a moment, then shrugged, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his usually guarded expression. It's a strange thing. People think it makes life easier, but it just complicates it in ways you wouldn't believe. People expect things from you, want things from you. It's not always as simple as it seems. Jack studied him for a moment, realizing that even someone like Keanu Reeves, someone with wealth, fame, and recognition, had struggles of his own. The thought was both humbling and comforting. Maybe fame wasn't the answer to everything. Maybe it wasn't the solution to all the pain and loss. Yeah, well, Jack said with a shrug, we all have our battles to fight, don't we? Keanu smiled, nodding. Exactly. We all have our own wars, big or small. The air between them grew quieter, a shared understanding settling in. Jack returned to the engine, his tools moving with a renewed sense of purpose, as if the weight of their conversation had given him a new spark of motivation. Keanu, for his part, stood in the rain for a while longer, simply watching the old man work. It wasn't often he got the chance to have a genuine conversation with someone outside of the chaos of his celebrity life. There was something grounding about it. So what about you? Jack asked after a while, glancing up. What's the story behind Keanu Reeves, the man behind the actor? Keanu smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes entirely. He shook his head. That's a long story, but if you're asking what keeps me going, it's the little moments like this one. A conversation with a stranger, fixing a car, sharing a laugh. It's the simple things that remind me why I do what I do. Jack looked at him, considering his words. He couldn't help but wonder what it was like to live a life where everyone knew your name, but few truly knew the real you. Maybe that's the secret, huh? Jack said, half to himself. Not the fame, not the money. Just finding something that keeps you going, no matter what. Keanu nodded, his eyes reflecting a depth of understanding Jack could feel. The sound of the rain was deafening, but in that moment, it seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them, sharing a moment of quiet wisdom in the midst of an unpredictable night. And though they had just met, something about this encounter felt different. Something about this conversation, this connection, would stick with both of them long after the rain stopped. What do you think about Keanu's perspective on fame? Have you ever realized that the simple things in life can make all the difference? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more of this journey, because this story is just beginning. As the rain began to slow, the sound of the droplets tapping against the car hood softened, but the tension in the air only seemed to increase. Jack's hands were steady now as he worked through the last of the repairs, the engine purring to life again. But there was a sense that something was still unresolved, between him and Keanu and perhaps even within himself. Keanu stood back, watching Jack work with quiet patience. But the truth was, there was more to this encounter than either of them had anticipated. Jack could feel it in the air, like something was hanging by a thread, ready to snap. "You're almost done," Keanu said, breaking the silence. But there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice now. Jack nodded, wiping his hands on a rag before returning it to his tool belt. "Yeah, just about. You got lucky. This could have been a real headache." Keanu smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm starting to feel like I'm the one who's lucky." Jack paused, looking at Keanu closely. There was something about his words that felt heavy, like he wasn't just talking about the car. For a moment, the mechanic's instincts kicked in. There was more going on here than a simple roadside breakdown. "What do you mean by that?" Jack asked, his voice softer now, the sharpness of the workday fading away. Keanu hesitated, looking down at the car as if trying to find the right words. I don't know. I guess I've been in this world for so long, always trying to keep up, always trying to make everyone happy. But sometimes I wonder if it's all worth it. You get so caught up in the grind, you forget what matters." Jack's brows furrowed. He could hear the weariness in Keanu's voice, the frustration, and he understood it all too well. The exhaustion of constantly running, of never being able to escape the expectations that others placed on you. "You start to feel like a machine, don't you?" Jack said quietly, more to himself than to Keanu. Keanu looked at him, his gaze sharp, But there was a sense of recognition in his eyes. "Yeah, exactly, you know what that's like." Jack chuckled, a dry sound, but it was full of understanding. "I've been working on cars my whole life. You take something apart, fix it, put it back together, and it's never quite the same. But you don't get to stop. Not if you want. To eat, not if you want to keep your place." Keanu nodded slowly. "I get that," he said, his voice quiet. I think I've been trying to fix the wrong things." Jack glanced up at him, noticing how worn down Keanu seemed now. He didn't look like the action star, the man who graced movie screens across the world. He looked like a man who was, in a way, lost. The weight of his words, the depth of what he was saying, hung in the air like an unspoken truth. "You can't fix everything, Keanu," Jack said. "Sometimes you have to let go of the things that are out of your control. The world doesn't owe you anything." Keanu looked at Jack, the weight of his own struggles reflected in the older man's words. He stood there for a moment, the rain, now reduced to a light mist, staring at the mechanic who had lived a life of hard work and sacrifice. But just as the moment seemed to settle, as though some kind of mutual understanding had been reached, a car engine roared in the distance. Jack's heart sank, and Keanu looked over, his gaze hardening instantly. A car, fast and aggressive, barreled down the road, headlights blinding in the foggy night. It didn't stop or slow down, just zoomed past them, sending a spray of water across the dirt road. The vehicle didn't even look like it was in good condition, and Jack's instincts told him that something wasn't right. "Who the hell drives like that at this hour?" Jack muttered under his breath. Keanu's eyes narrowed as the car disappeared into the distance. He seemed to recognize something in the way it sped by, something Jack couldn't understand, but it was clear by the change in Keanu's expression that whatever it was, it didn't sit well with him. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, sensing the sudden shift in Keanu's demeanor. Keanu didn't answer at first. He just stared at the road as though deep in thought, his mind racing with 1,000 possibilities. Finally, he turned to Jack, his voice tense. "I'm fine," Keanu said, though his tone suggested otherwise. I thought I recognized that car." Jack frowned, his curiosity piqued. "What's the deal? You know who that was?" Keanu hesitated for a moment, but then, with a heavy sigh, he nodded. "It's someone from my past." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Someone from your past?" Keanu turned to look at Jack, his eyes filled with something Jack couldn't quite place. Regret? Anger? Maybe even a bit of fear? "It's not just any someone," Keanu said. "It's a person who has a history with me, a history I thought I left behind." The tension in the air thickened, as if the storm wasn't over yet. Keanu's past had just caught up with him, and Jack had unknowingly become a part of it. But what did that mean for the two of them now? Jack could feel it, the unease between them. It was no longer just about fixing a car on a rainy night. This was something bigger, something much deeper. The question was, would they be able to navigate the storm that was coming, or would it tear everything apart? What do you think Keanu is hiding from his past? Is this encounter with Jack about to turn into something much more dangerous? Let us know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next in this unexpected journey. The night grew heavier with tension. The distant rumble of thunder echoed across the sky, but the sound felt muted compared to the silence that now hung between Jack and Keanu. The man who had just moments ago seemed like a calm, introspective figure was now visibly on edge, his mind clearly racing. Jack had no idea what he had just stumbled into, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about fixing a car anymore. Keanu turned away, his expression hardening as he took a few steps toward the road. Jack could see the shadows of old memories flickering behind his eyes, the kind of thing no amount of fame or fortune could erase. He knew that look. It was the same one he'd seen in the eyes of many people, pain, regret, and the inevitable weight of past decisions that couldn't be undone. "Keanu," Jack called out softly. "What happened?" Keanu didn't answer immediately. He was staring at the horizon, watching the taillights of the car disappear into the mist. His voice, when it came, was low and tinged with something that sounded like frustration. "I thought I was done with that part of my life. But I guess I was wrong. Jack didn't press him further. He'd learned long ago that sometimes people weren't ready to talk, even when they desperately needed to. Instead, Jack stood there, quietly observing, waiting for Keanu to speak when he was ready. Finally, Keanu turned back toward him, his expression softer, though still heavy with the weight of whatever it was that had unsettled him. "That car belongs to someone I used to know. Someone who I thought I'd left behind." Jack nodded, sensing that this was only the beginning of a much bigger story. "Who are they?" Jack asked gently. "What's going on?" Keanu hesitated again, his eyes flickering with a mixture of uncertainty and something darker, something Jack could barely name. "It's a long story, Jack. But that person, they're not someone I want to cross paths with again. Not now. Not ever." The mechanic's mind started to race. He had a good sense of people, of trouble when it was coming their way. And right now, the storm in the air wasn't just the weather. It was something that had nothing to do with rain, and everything to do with Keanu's past. Jack looked up at the stars, still partially visible through the thinning clouds. "I get it," he said, his voice steady. "I've had my own run-ins with people I'd rather forget." Keanu raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the unexpected connection. "Really? You, a small-town mechanic, have a past with people you'd rather forget?" Jack's smile was small, but it carried the weight of years of experience. "We all have our stories, Keanu. You're not the only one with skeletons in the closet." For a moment, the two men stood there side by side, each caught up in their own thoughts, connected by an unspoken bond that only comes from sharing something real, something raw. The storm had stopped, and the air felt heavier than ever. Keanu finally broke the silence. "I need to go after them." Jack turned to face him, surprised. "After them? Are you sure that's a good idea?" Keanu's jaw tightened. "I'm not sure of anything right now, but I can't let this slide. Not again." Without another word, Keanu walked back to his car, sliding into the driver's seat and revving the engine to life. The low rumble of the sports car echoed in the empty road, a stark contrast to the stillness that surrounded them. Jack felt the pull of the moment. This was bigger than anything he'd expected when he'd first agreed to help. "Keanu!" Jack called out, suddenly realizing that he couldn't just let the man go off into the night alone, not with whatever danger lay ahead. Keanu rolled down the window and looked back, his expression hard and determined. "You don't have to come with me. This is something I need to handle." Jack stood there for a moment, contemplating. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't some action star with a penchant for chasing down bad guys. But what had started as a simple repair had turned into something that felt important. And deep down, he knew he couldn't just stand by. "I'm coming with you," Jack said, surprising even himself with his certainty. "You don't have to do this alone." Keanu's gaze softened for a moment. He looked like he wanted to protest, but something in Jack's eyes made him pause. Maybe it was the understanding, the connection that had formed between them in those few quiet moments. Maybe it was something else entirely. Keanu nodded. "All right, but stay close. It's going to get messy." With that, the two men drove off into the night, the headlights cutting through the darkness. Jack didn't know what lay ahead, but he was in it now. He didn't know who Keanu was running from or why, but he felt that the path they were about to take would change both of their lives in ways they couldn't yet understand. As they drove through the quiet streets, Jack kept glancing at Keanu. The actor's face was set in concentration, his grip tight on the wheel, eyes scanning the road ahead. Jack could see the old wounds that hadn't quite healed, but he also saw the determination, the drive that kept Keanu moving forward, even when it felt like the world was pushing him back. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The hum of the engine was the only sound as they sped through the empty streets, heading toward the unknown. "Keanu," Jack finally said, breaking the silence. "You sure you want to go back to all this?" Keanu didn't look at him, but his voice was steady. "I don't have a choice. Sometimes you have to face your demons head-on, otherwise they'll just keep coming back." Jack nodded, his mind filled with questions that he didn't yet have answers to. But for now, all he could do was follow Keanu into whatever storm was waiting for them. And as the dark road stretched on ahead, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of something much bigger than a simple car repair. What do you think will happen when Keanu faces his past? What could be waiting for them on the other side? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe to see where this wild journey leads next. The further Keanu and Jack drove, the thicker the tension became. The road stretched on in a monotonous blur of headlights and rain-soaked pavement, but the storm brewing in the air was far from ordinary. Keanu's knuckles whitened as his grip tightened on the wheel, his jaw set in a way that spoke of unresolved anger and years of pent-up frustration. Jack could feel it too. There was no turning back now. "You still haven't told me who we're chasing down," Jack said, trying to break the silence, his voice a bit more strained than he intended. "What's going on, Keanu? What's the deal with that car?" Keanu's eyes flickered briefly to Jack, but he didn't answer right away. His focus remained on the road ahead, the line of lights guiding them further into the night. But Jack could see it now. Something was shifting in Keanu's demeanor. The carefree actor he'd met earlier was gone. In his place was a man with a history that had just caught up with him, one that refused to stay buried. "His name's Damon," Keanu finally said, his voice taut with emotion. "He's someone I used to know a long time ago." Jack could feel the weight of the name even without knowing the full context. There was something cold in Keanu's tone, something that hinted at deep wounds, things better left unsaid. "What kind of history are we talking about?" Jack asked cautiously. Keanu exhaled sharply, the words clearly coming with great difficulty. "We used to be close, worked together, partied together, the usual. But Damon, he's different. Now we had a falling out, a big one. He was involved in things that I didn't want to be a part of, things that—" He trailed off, the pain evident in his eyes. Jack turned his gaze from the road to Keanu, the man's vulnerability shining through the cracks. "You think he's involved in something dangerous now?" Keanu nodded. "I'm sure of it. He's been mixed up in some shady business. And the last time I saw him, I promised myself I'd never look back. But now I don't have a choice. He's gone too far." Jack remained silent for a moment, the weight of Keanu's words sinking in. There were some things that weren't easy to run from, no matter how far you'd come or how much time had passed. And apparently, Keanu's past was one of those things. "So, what now?" Jack asked, his voice firm. "What are we going to do when we find him?" Keanu's eyes locked with Jack's, the intensity of his gaze palpable. "I don't know. I really don't. But I can't let him drag me back into whatever mess he's in, and I can't let him hurt anyone else." The words hung between them as they turned onto a narrow road lined with trees. The streets were now deserted, the houses few and far between. Jack couldn't help but notice the way Keanu's body was taut, every muscle on edge as he drove. This wasn't just about an old friend. It was about something deeper. Something that, for whatever reason, Keanu felt responsible for. As they neared a run-down warehouse at the edge of town, the hairs on the back of Jack's neck stood on end. It was a place that looked abandoned, yet there was something about it that seemed to pulse with danger. "This is it," Keanu said quietly, slowing the car to a stop in the shadow of the warehouse. He glanced at Jack, his face a mix of determination and dread. "This is where it all went wrong." Jack's heart began to race. The air felt thick with anticipation. The last thing he expected when he agreed to help fix a car was to end up here in the middle of the night at a place like this, chasing down ghosts from Keanu's past. "What now?" Jack asked, his voice steady, but his eyes scanning the darkened surroundings. Keanu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he grabbed something from the glove compartment, a small weathered handgun. Jack's stomach twisted at the sight. He'd seen his share of tough situations, but this felt different. There was real danger here, something far beyond car repairs or roadside assistance. Keanu caught Jack's look and offered a half-hearted smile, though it was strained. "You might want to stay in the car," he said, voice low. "This could get ugly." Jack didn't flinch, he didn't back down. He'd already stepped too far into this mess to walk away now. "I'm coming with you." Keanu stared at him for a long moment, his face unreadable. Finally, he gave a sharp nod. "All right, stick close and be ready for anything." The two men stepped out of the car, the night air heavy with the smell of rain and rust. As they approached the warehouse, the door creaked open just a sliver, as if waiting for them. The eerie silence of the place sent a chill down Jack's spine. He could feel the tension building with every step they took. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of oil and old machinery. Keanu moved with purpose, his every step calculated, his eyes darting around the dark corners of the space. Jack stayed close behind, his heart hammering in his chest as the sense of impending danger grew stronger. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the cavernous room. Jack's pulse quickened. Keanu's body went rigid, his hand tightening around the gun as they both turned toward the source of the noise. Out of the shadows, a figure emerged. Tall with broad shoulders, the man's face was partially obscured by the dim light, but Jack could see enough to recognize the dangerous energy that radiated from him. "Keanu," the man said, his voice cold and mocking. "I knew you'd show up eventually." Jack could see the recognition flash across Keanu's face. Damon. The two men stood there for a long moment, the silence between them thick with unspoken history and anger. "You're still here, huh?" Damon said, his lips curling into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I thought you'd be long gone by now." Keanu's response was calm, but there was no mistaking the anger simmering beneath the surface. "I came to finish this, Damon. Whatever this is between it ends tonight." Damon's eyes flickered with something, amusement, danger. It was hard to tell. "I think you're too late for that, Keanu." With that, the world seemed to snap into place, and Jack realized that the storm he had felt building wasn't just metaphorical. They were in the eye of it now. What do you think Damon has in store for Keanu and Jack? Will they survive the confrontation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments and make sure to hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. Silence in the warehouse was deafening as Keanu and Damon stood facing each other, the years of their unresolved tension thickening the air between them. Jack stood at the periphery, his hand hovering over his side as if instinctively ready for whatever might come next. The unease in the air was palpable, every movement, every breath seeming to echo off the steel walls of the abandoned building. Damon's smirk only deepened, his eyes glinting with cold amusement. "You always did think you were better than me, didn't you?" His voice was smooth, almost casual, but there was an edge to it that made the hairs on the back of Jack's neck stand up. Keanu's expression hardened, his jaw clenching. "This isn't about being better, Damon. It's about what you've become, what you've been doing." Damon raised an eyebrow, clearly enjoying the tension. "Is that what this is about? You think I've become something? You're not as innocent as you want to believe, Keanu." He took a step forward, the shadow of a dark past lingering in his gaze. "You and I both know you've got blood on your hands, too. So don't come here acting like you're some kind of saint." Jack's stomach churned at the mention of blood, the atmosphere growing thicker as the weight of their past bared down on them. Keanu's face remained impassive, but Jack could see the flicker of memories in his eyes, memories he clearly wasn't ready to confront. The past wasn't just a memory for Keanu. It was alive, a dangerous specter that had been waiting to pull him back in. "Stop it, Damon," Keanu said, his voice low but firm. "This doesn't need to go any further." But Damon just laughed, his chuckle echoing in the large, empty space. "It always goes further, Keanu. That's the thing about people like us. We don't get to walk away unscathed." For a long moment, the air seemed to vibrate with the weight of their unspoken history. Jack could feel the shift, the turning point that was fast approaching. Keanu wasn't just fighting Damon tonight. He was fighting the man he used to be, the choices he had made, and the guilt that had followed him ever since. Suddenly, Damon's tone changed. The mockery disappeared from his voice, replaced by something far more dangerous. "You think you can just walk in here and take control of everything, don't you? You think because you've got fame and some money, you can come back and make it all better?" Keanu's expression faltered, the anger in his eyes flickering, replaced by a deep, painful sorrow. "I'm not trying to fix it, Damon. I'm trying to stop you from destroying more lives." The words seemed to hang in the air between them, and for a brief, fleeting moment it looked like Damon might actually consider them. But then, the coldness returned to his eyes. You're too late. This has gone beyond you, Keanu. Without warning, Damon moved swiftly, his hand reaching inside his jacket. Jack's instincts kicked in. He didn't hesitate. Keanu, watch out! Keanu was already ahead of him, ducking low as Damon drew a weapon from beneath his coat. The sound of gunfire echoed through the warehouse, deafening in the confined space. Jack's heart raced as he instinctively dove to the side, his mind racing. This was no longer a game. Keanu reacted quickly, his training and reflexes kicking in as he knocked Damon's arm upward, sending the bullet into the rafters above. The two men struggled, Damon's cold sneer still painted across his face, as if every move was part of a long twisted dance he thought he could control. The room seemed to stretch in all directions, Jack's breath coming in short gasps as he moved toward Keanu, hoping to give him backup. But Keanu didn't need it. With a quick motion, Keanu grabbed Damon's wrist, twisting it until the weapon fell to the ground with a metallic clatter. For a brief, tense second, all that could be heard was the sound of their heavy breathing. Keanu stood tall, his hand still on Damon's wrist, but the fight in his eyes had dulled. He wasn't just fighting Damon anymore. He was fighting himself, the man who had once believed in redemption, but was now realizing that some choices don't allow you to move forward. Damon gritted his teeth. You think you can just walk away from this, from everything I've done? His voice was strained, a mixture of anger and desperation. Keanu paused for a long moment, his gaze flicking from Damon to Jack, then back to Damon. The silence that followed was heavy, full of everything they had left unsaid. I'm done running, Keanu finally said, his voice firm. But this ends now. With one last twist, Keanu forced Damon to his knees, pinning him to the cold, hard floor. Damon's defiance slowly faded as the fight drained from him, leaving behind only the broken man who had once been Keanu's friend. The storm that had raged in the warehouse, in both men's hearts, had come to a sudden, violent end. Jack exhaled sharply, his body still buzzing with adrenaline. He had expected things to get dangerous, but he never thought it would come to this. He stood there, watching Keanu, his face still etched with tension and regret, but there was something else there too, a sense of resolution. We're done here, Keanu said quietly, his hand still gripping Damon's arm. But his voice, no longer laced with anger, it was final. I'm not the man I was, Damon, and neither are you. For a moment, Damon's eyes flickered with something, maybe regret, maybe bitterness, but then it was gone, replaced with a look of resignation. The fight was over. There was no more running. Keanu stood up, stepping away from Damon as if the weight of the entire encounter had been lifted from his shoulders. He turned to Jack, his face softening, though the shadows of the past would never fully fade. Thanks for being here, Keanu said simply, his voice sincere but tinged with exhaustion. I couldn't have done this alone. Jack nodded, a slight smile tugging at his lips. I think you just needed someone to remind you that you weren't alone. As they walked out of the warehouse, the cold night air greeted them, a stark contrast to the intense heat of the past moments. Jack glanced at Keanu, who seemed lighter somehow, even though the burden of his past would likely always be a part of him. There was a change in Keanu, a growth, a realization that couldn't be ignored. As the two of them drove away, the dark roads of the night now felt like they held possibility, not just danger. And Jack realized that just like Keanu, he had learned something important too. Sometimes you don't fix things by running from them. You face them, you stand up to them, and in the end, that's the only way to truly move forward. What do you think? Has Keanu finally closed the chapter on his past? Or will it always be there, lurking in the shadows? Let us know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more amazing twists and turns. The ride back from the warehouse was eerily quiet, with the rain now reduced to a light drizzle that barely tapped against the windshield. Keanu's hands rested loosely on the wheel, his knuckles no longer white from tension, but still with an underlying weariness that seemed to weigh him down. Jack sat beside him, watching the night unfold in a blur of streetlights and wet asphalt, his mind swirling with everything that had just transpired. It was hard to process. What started as a simple car repair turned into a life-altering adventure one that none of them had seen coming. The confrontation with Damon had been brutal, raw, and revealing. Keanu had faced a part of his past that he'd long buried, only to find that running from it wasn't an option anymore. "So what now?" Jack asked, his voice quiet, but filled with curiosity. The adrenaline was still coursing through him, though the tension of the moment was fading. He wanted to know what came next, not just for Keanu, but for them both. Keanu took a deep breath, his eyes still locked on the road ahead. "I don't know," he said simply, the words laced with both resignation and a strange kind of peace. "Maybe I'll finally figure out how to live without constantly looking over my shoulder." Jack nodded, understanding more than Keanu probably realized. "I get that. It's hard, isn't it? Letting go of the past when it keeps trying to pull you back." Keanu glanced at him briefly, a small smile playing on his lips. "You know, you're not the person I expected to be here with me tonight, Jack. But you've got a way of staying calm when everything's falling apart. That's something I'll never forget." Jack's smile widened, though he didn't have much to say in response. He hadn't expected to be on this journey either, but in a strange way, helping Keanu confront his demons had also helped him confront his own. They drove in silence for a while, both of them processing the weight of the night in their own way. The past, with all its tangled mess of choices and regrets, had been dealt with, at least for now. The road ahead seemed clearer, but it was still an uncertain one. Neither of them knew what awaited them when the sun came up, but for the first time in a long while it didn't seem quite as daunting. Finally, as they neared the city limits, Keanu broke the silence again, his voice softer this time. "You're right, you know. It's not about fixing things, it's about facing them. I'm not sure I've fully figured it out yet, but maybe I don't have to. Maybe all I need to do is keep moving forward." Jack looked over at him, a thought striking him in that moment. "Sure, you've got a lot more ahead of you than you think, Keanu. I can tell. You've got the strength to keep going, no matter what comes your way." Keanu didn't reply right away. Instead, he focused on the road ahead, the headlights illuminating, the endless stretches of highway in front of them. For a long moment, neither of them said anything, but the sense of understanding between them was mutual. They were both dealing with their own battles, but tonight had shown them that maybe, just maybe, they weren't as alone as they once thought. As the city skyline loomed in the distance, a sense of closure began to settle over Keanu. The past had been a dark cloud hanging over him, but tonight he had found a way to break through it. There were still struggles ahead. Life never really got easy. But there was hope now, a possibility for redemption. And that in itself was something worth holding on to. Keanu slowed the car as they entered the city, the lights reflecting off the wet streets like stars. The end of one journey and the start of another. "You know," Keanu said, breaking the silence again. "Maybe the car was just the beginning of this whole thing. Maybe what I really needed wasn't a repair. Maybe I needed someone to remind me that life's about fixing more than just the obvious things." Jack turned to look at him, his smile genuine. "I guess that's what friends are for." Keanu's grin was small but meaningful. "Yeah, I guess so." The car rolled to a stop at a red light, and for the first time in hours, both men sat there in a moment of quiet. They weren't sure what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight, they had found something worth fighting for. A sense of peace, of moving forward, of being able to look at the future without the shadow of the past looming over them. As they sat at that intersection, the world outside seemed a little brighter, a little less uncertain. The journey they'd shared had come to an end, but in many ways it was just the beginning of something new, and so they drove on, towards the unknown, towards the next chapter. Together, perhaps. What about you? If you were in Keanu's shoes, what would you do to move forward after everything he's been through? Would you be able to face your past head-on like he did? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more incredible stories like this one. Thanks for joining us on this journey. The car rolled through the quiet streets, the glow of neon signs flickering against the rain-soaked windows. Keanu and Jack didn't speak much, both lost in their thoughts. The journey they'd just experienced, wild, harrowing, and full of unexpected turns, had shaken them both in ways they hadn't anticipated. Jack kept his gaze on the road ahead, the lights outside reflecting off the dashboard. He was trying to process everything that had happened. They had come to the warehouse that night for something entirely different, an ordinary car repair, a routine job. But life had a funny way of pulling you into the unexpected. Keanu, on the other hand, was deep in his own mind. The weight of what had transpired, the confrontation with Damon, the buried emotions, and the release of years of tension was still settling within him. He wasn't sure where things would go from here, but for the first time in a long time he didn't feel like he was running from something. Maybe, just maybe, he was running towards something instead. As they turned onto a quieter street, Jack broke the silence. "You okay, man?" His voice was light, but there was a genuine concern behind it. Keanu let out a deep breath, his eyes still focused on the road. "Yeah, I think I'm finally okay. For the first time in a long time, I don't feel like I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders." Jack smiled faintly. "It's good to hear that. You've been through a lot, and I don't think anyone really knows how heavy that burden is unless they've walked in your shoes." Keanu's grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "I don't know how you've kept it together tonight, man. I mean, this whole thing is bigger than I thought it would be, and you've been right here beside me the whole time." Jack shrugged, trying to play it off. "It's what friends do. You don't go through something like this alone." There was a long pause. Then Keanu glanced over at Jack, his face serious. "You really think that? That I've got friends I can count on?" Jack chuckled softly. "You'd be surprised. Sometimes it takes something big, something like tonight, to show you who's really got your back." Keanu's lips twitched into a small smile. "I guess so." He let out another breath, his expression softening. "I've been so used to doing things on my own. I guess I forgot what it felt like to let someone in." Jack didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. The truth was clear. Keanu had spent so much time fighting battles alone that trusting someone had become foreign to him. But tonight, something had changed. That shift, that realization, was monumental. Not just for Keanu, but for both of them. As they neared Keanu's place, the sound of rain tapping lightly against the windshield filled the silence again. The city lights seemed to twinkle in the distance, as if the world was offering a quiet moment of peace in the midst of everything that had transpired. Keanu turned to Jack. "You know, I didn't expect any of this. A car repair that turns into something like this? Never saw it coming." He shook his head with a quiet laugh. "Maybe the universe has a funny way of making us face what we've been avoiding." Jack nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "I think sometimes we get pulled into things for a reason. Maybe you were meant to come here tonight. Maybe I was meant to be here with you." Keanu shot him a curious glance. "You think so?" "Yeah," Jack replied, "because honestly sometimes you need someone to remind you that you don't have to fight your battles alone. Not everything is meant to be done in solitude." The words hung in the air between them, like a quiet revelation that neither of them could deny. For all the chaos and pain they had faced in the past, tonight had proven that there was strength in connection, in reaching out when you needed help. It wasn't always about fixing everything. It was about facing what needed to be faced and learning to lean on those who were there for you. As Keanu pulled into his driveway, he parked the car, but neither of them made a move to get out right away. The stillness of the moment seemed to hold something special, something rare that neither of them wanted to break just yet. "Well," Keanu said finally, his voice thoughtful, "I guess this is where we part ways for the night. But thanks, Jack. You've been more of a friend to me tonight than I ever thought I could have." Jack nodded, his smile warm and sincere. "You don't have to thank me, man. You've been through hell and back, and I'm just glad I could be there to help you through it. I'm proud of you, Keanu." Keanu's smile was small but genuine. "Yeah, well, it's not over, but it feels like a new chapter's beginning. I'm not sure what the future holds, but for the first time I'm ready to find out." Jack opened his door, pausing for a moment before stepping out. "Whatever happens, just remember, you're not alone in this, not anymore." With that, he shut the door behind him, and Keanu watched him walk to his own car, his heart a little lighter than it had been when the night began. The storm had passed, both literally and figuratively. What lay ahead was unknown, but Keanu was no longer afraid to face it. As the engine of Jack's car faded into the distance, Keanu sat back in the driver's seat, allowing himself a moment to breathe. The events of the night had changed him, reshaped him in ways he couldn't quite put into words. He didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the path to figuring things out. And maybe that was enough. The road ahead was long, and it would be filled with new challenges. But Keanu Reeves wasn't the same man who had walked into that warehouse hours ago. Tonight, he had faced his past, and though it wasn't easy, it had given him something valuable, a new sense of purpose, a reason to keep moving forward. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most important lesson of all. What do you think? Do you think Keanu is ready to take on whatever life has in store for him now? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss out on more stories that are bound to surprise you. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. Keanu sat alone in the dimly lit garage, the hum of the overhead lights the only sound breaking the quiet. The car was now fixed, and with the storm behind him, he had nowhere left to go but forward. His hand rested on the steering wheel, fingers absent-mindedly tracing the cool leather, as though reconnecting with the simple task of driving. He wasn't in a rush, not anymore. The weight of the night hung on him, but it didn't feel like a burden anymore. His past, its darkness, its regrets, had been pulled into the light. And though the weight of it was still there was a certain clarity now, a sense that the fog had cleared. It wasn't a perfect resolution, not by a long shot, but it was a beginning. And that was enough for Keanu. He glanced at the clock in his car. It was late, almost early morning, but he knew he needed to make one more call. This wasn't a call to anyone involved in the mess with Damon or the life he'd left behind. It wasn't about business, not even about the car. It was about something deeper, something more personal. He picked up his phone and dialed the number, waiting as the rings echoed in his ear. The line clicked, and a familiar voice answered on the other end. Keanu. The voice was warm, calm. It was a voice Keanu hadn't heard in too long, one that had always felt like home. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Keanu replied softly, his voice carrying the weight of everything that had happened. "I think I've finally figured some things out." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then a soft sigh. "I knew you would. You've always had a way of working through the toughest stuff. It's why I never doubted you." Keanu smiled faintly, his chest loosening at the sound of this voice. It was a voice that had been there for him through all the dark moments, the voice that had never given up on him, even when he had given up on himself. "I just needed to stop running," Keanu continued, his voice firm but laced with vulnerability. "I had to stop pretending like the past didn't matter. It does, it always has. But it's not who I am anymore, not completely." "I'm proud of you," the voice said simply, but it held a weight of sincerity that Keanu felt in his bones. "Sometimes it's the hardest thing in the world to face what we've been avoiding, but you're doing it." Keanu took a deep breath, feeling a small sense of peace settle within him. "Yeah, I don't know what comes next, but I think I'm finally ready to find out." The other end of the line was silent for a moment before the voice spoke again, this time with a gentle but knowing tone. "Life isn't just about fixing things, Keanu. It's about learning from the mistakes, the scars, and using those lessons to grow. You've always had the strength to face things head-on. You just needed to believe it yourself." Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the truth of those words settle deep within him. He had spent so much of his life hiding from the things he couldn't control, running from the people he thought had wronged him, or from the parts of himself he couldn't face. But in the end, it was the act of facing it all head-on that had brought him peace. "Thanks," Keanu finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything." The voice on the other end chuckled softly. "Any time, Keanu. I'll always be here." He ended the call with a long, quiet exhale, his fingers lingering on the phone before placing it down. The garage was still dark, but somehow the space around him felt brighter. The weight of the night had lifted, and for the first time in a long while, Keanu felt like he could breathe again. He stepped out of the car, moving towards the door of the garage. As he reached for the handle, he glanced back at the car. It was no longer a symbol of something broken or unfinished. It wasn't just a tool to fix or escape from. It had become something more, a reminder that sometimes the most difficult journeys were the ones that led us to ourselves. Keanu turned off the light and stepped outside into the crisp air. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a sense of calm. The sky was clear now, the stars faintly visible above. For the first time in ages, Keanu felt ready for whatever lay ahead. He wasn't sure where the road would take him next, but he wasn't afraid to find out. The journey had taught him more than he ever expected, and in the end, it wasn't just about fixing the car. It was about learning to fix himself. Keanu took a deep breath, looking up at the night sky, a slight smile crossing his lips. The future was uncertain, but the one thing he knew for sure was that he wasn't walking it alone. So what do you think? Do you believe Keanu is finally ready to move forward with his life, or is there still more to his story? If you've been following along, we want to hear your thoughts. How would you face your past if you were in Keanu's shoes? Leave a comment below and share your perspective with us. Don't forget to hit subscribe to stay tuned for more exciting stories and incredible journeys ahead.